Alexander Payne, welcome to Q.
Thanks for having me.
It's a pleasure. So people might think they know you as a filmmaker based on the kinds of stories you've told in the past. Some of the early reports about this film, reviews of the film, describe it as a departure for you. Do you see it as a departure?
Not at all.
Really?
Actually, it's on a bigger canvas, let's say, and Jim Taylor, my co-writer, had never previously used a science fiction sort of premise as a way into a story. But for him and me, as writers, and for me as a director, I see it more as a summing up of the themes we've been playing with in our previous 6 films. And it's actually after this film that I hope to do something genuinely different, like a genuine departure.
Where do you see the continuation of the themes?
I think it has some of the, I mean, it would be for you as a viewer to confirm if you've deigned to see those films. But I think it has some of the satirical, quasi-political elements of our first 2 films, Citizen Ruth and Election. I think it has a schnook from Omaha, bewildered and trying to find his way through life that you see in About Schmidt, a little bit also in Election, and the same thing about a somewhat bewildered middle-aged man that you even in The Descendants and Nebraska. So I think the movie plays a lot with a lot of those same themes, but just amps it all up to a bigger level. So for me, it's not a departure at all. To me, it's very much almost disappointingly a continuation. And to repeat, it's in my next film that I really want to be like a dog coming out of a lake and shake it all off and do something really new.
Make a Rocky in space or something like that.
Well,
I hate to spoil it.
Yeah, or a rodeo movie or something. You know, who the hell knows?
But there is a departure in that there is this kind of supernatural quality to it. I mean,
yeah, but we treat it in a very realistic, naturalistic way. And, you know, I mean, we've got visual effects in the film and there's a science fiction premise, as I said, but it's really, I'm seeking for the banality within all of that.
I heard that
in the realism.
I heard that this idea of shrinking people down came from a conversation that you were having about how great it would be and how inexpensive it would be to shrink everything down.
Yeah, and I'm sure we're not the first person in the world to have that kind of musing. And it actually didn't come from me. It came from Jim Taylor and his brother. And then it kind of trickled down to me. Hey, is there something we could do with this movie?
So Jim Taylor's your co-writer on this film, right?
Right.
And so tell me about that conversation. He comes to you and he says, I have this idea for shrinking people down. And you say?
Well, what do we do with it? And then the ideas that we were talking about originally went in more broadly comic, to my mind, a bit more predictable directions, because that's just where you default when you're first thinking about something. You kind of default to what you've seen. But then time elapsed. And we had a moderate success with the film Sideways. And after that...
Oh, so this is long ago.
We conceived it in '06. Wow. And he had been talking about it even before then. And it was always on our little menu of ideas that we would look at between films, like, oh, what are we going to do next? And what about this one? You kind of see which idea might find purchase in our loins. And in '06, then I came back to Jim and said, what if we put it in a very realistic and somewhat political context and considered it as a panacea, a proposed panacea to overpopulation?
I think that what was surprising for me and ultimately kind of rewarding for me as an audience member was that there was no big cat coming towards the small people moment, no insects. I mean, it was hinted at, the birds coming at you.
Yeah.
Was that a conscious decision to leave those kind of small movie tropes out?
Yes.
That was something you discussed?
We weren't against it, but and we didn't plan it in advance, like, oh, we're going to make this film about small people. But I mean, I've never seen Honey, I Shrunk the Kids. And I did watch Incredible Shrinking Man because it's also a wonderful film. By the way, Incredible Shrinking Man proves that it's the ideas behind a film which are ultimately more important than the success of the visual effects.
What do you mean? Did you have to apply that to this?
No, I'm just saying that in Incredible Shrinking Man, the visual effects are quite primitive, but you forgive them all because the story is so good.
But did that tell you that your visual effects are quite striking?
It made me think I can compromise on the no. Well, I just thought if we screw it up somehow, it'll be okay as long as the script is there. No, I'm happy with the visual effects in this movie.
But it goes the other way, doesn't it? The visual effects are stunning in this film.
Oh, goody.
But it doesn't matter.
That's for you to say.
But it doesn't matter because ultimately the script has to be good. If anything, you have to work against The Incredible Shrinking Man.
Yeah, I didn't exactly follow that, but sure.
Well, you know what I mean.
You know.
In that a great script can overcome poor special effects.
But
you can't lean on incredible special effects.
Correct,
Yeah.
correct. And certainly when I was making this, my first visual effects movie, I knew it was my job as director to keep the story and the characters front and center, while at the same time paying great attention to the visual effects and making sure they were rock solid. But I wanted the visual effects to be so good that you didn't notice them.
Yeah.
That they come off almost as banal.
One of the things this film explores is the choices that we make when everything seems hopeless. And in Downsizing, characters are forced to choose between becoming small, and in many ways that means retreating and focusing on the self, or looking outward and trying to help others. So in this current climate, Alexander Payne, what gives you hope when you look at the news?
By the way, that was a very nice articulation of one possible metaphor in the film, so thanks for that.
No problem.
I have to write that down.
You can have it, no cost.
What was what now? What was your question?
What gives you hope when you look at the news? It seems like a very hopeful film.
I disagree that it's a hopeful film. Well, look, I don't want to say anything about it because I made it. It's just coming out. I'm protective of wanting it to speak for itself,
of course,
to different viewers. But I've heard that it's optimistic and hopeful. This is just one viewer's point of view. I'm not really even speaking as a filmmaker, perhaps. I think it's fueled by a lot of pessimism, and I think it's fueled by the same pessimism which is fueling a lot of us these days as we read the newspapers and see what's going on, and we feel the winds of the world swirling in the wrong direction, with little possible hope for solution, seemingly. But we have to remain optimistic because there are always possibilities. Man doesn't always choose the right thing, but gosh darn it, we could if we just woke the heck up. I wanted to use an F word instead of
I appreciate
the heck
that.
word.
Thank you.
So,
do you consider yourself a hopeful person?
Well, like all of us, it's a mixed bag.
Yeah, yeah. It's not a cynical film.
Well, I don't know. Is it? Well, look, now I'm just reporting. I've been told over the years that the films I make might have a strong dose of cynicism, but it is tempered by affection for the characters. And I think that's accurate. That I tend to, Jim and I as writers and I as a director and my casting director and whom we cast to be in the films, we like people.
Well, speaking
as screwed up as they are, we like people. And a lot of life is what Christ said as he was about to croak. Forgive them, for they know not what they do.
I love that Matt Damon said about your film, this is Alexander Payne's most optimistic movie, and it has the apocalypse in it.
Yeah, well, there's that.
If you're just tuning in, I'm here with director Alexander Payne talking about his new film, Downsizing. For all the big themes in this film, it's also very funny. It's very character-driven. Actress Hong Chow is getting a lot of attention for her portrayal of a Vietnamese dissident who ends up being reduced in size against her will, working as a house cleaner. In interviews, she's saying this is a much more well-rounded character in this film than she normally sees for actors of Asian descent. Where did the inspiration for her character originally come from?
Jim and I, again, my co-writer, we knew we were going to make an American film, but we wanted to hint at how this idea would have rippled around the world. So we wanted to have characters from different countries play greater or lesser parts. And just somehow in our speaking, in our long conversations about the script, it occurred to us, of course, the more things change, the more they stay the same, that if downsizing were real, it would also be abused. And it would be used in prisons. It would be used, we joke that Israelis would want to shrink Palestinians if in fact they want their own state. And, you know, you think about a lot of stuff. And so one character emerged as we wanted to have someone who was downsized against her will in a prison, but eventually makes her way. We didn't know if it was a man or a woman. Finally, we decided on a woman. And this character makes her way to the States to somehow bizarrely meet our schnook from Omaha, played by Matt Damon. So that's where it came from. And the fact that she's an amputee, that she lost a leg coming over. For what it is there were a bunch of dissidents, and they tried to escape to America in a TV box.
TV box, yeah.
TV box, and they get discovered at a Costco in Oregon. Something was stinking in the stack, so they open up this and they find, 20 dead dissidents, and one has survived, and that's this woman.
Her character speaks with thick Vietnamese accent, and some have responded negatively to that accent. One writer said her accent was played for broad, casually racist humor, for example. What do you make of comments like that?
Well, I would ask, how was she supposed to speak? How is someone supposed to speak if English is not his or her native language, and if that person has had no formal training?
Did you speak with the actor about the portrayal of the accent?
She's the Vietnamese was her first language. Her parents and she are immigrants. Well, she was born in Thailand, but immigrants from Vietnam, and she was doing her parents to some degree.
Did this raise an antenna for you when you were writing the character? You had to be sure?
No.
Why not?
Sure of what?
Well, to be sure that you were, doing things right, doing things the right way by her.
By the character, by the actor?
By the actor.
We were fine with the script, and she was fine with the script, and so we just did it. If I'm understanding you right?
Well, I'm just wondering. I mean, there is this talk of the lack of English being played for laughs. The actor has come out herself and said that's not the case. I was wondering if you had talked to her about, hey, does this seem a little too far-fetched?
I have other characters, non-native English speakers in the film who also don't speak perfect English, but I haven't heard anything about them. Why is she being singled out?
Well, I think it was less that she doesn't speak perfect English and more that perhaps you had exaggerated the English that she did, the broken English that she did speak.
Whatever.
All right.
I have no idea. It's a good, solid, well-rounded character for whom English is not her native tongue. And
where do you think that criticism is coming from?
I'd have to ask them. And the other thing I would want to know is if they think she's a stereotype in some way. I would wish to be directed to the motion pictures that they're referring to, analogous motion pictures, where it's offensive or something.
What do you mean?
If they're saying, "Oh, she's like other characters in films," I would like to know what those films are.
Right. I haven't seen that. You've seen that she's being compared to other characters in other films.
No, I don't know. But if they're saying anyway, I just don't quite get it. I actually don't quite get it.
All right.
And you'd have to ask them where it's coming from.
Well, what are you hoping people are going to be saying to one another as they leave this film?
As always, I hope they think the film was well made and made with joy. I hope they sense the joy with which we made the film. And a lot of it, too, we shot most of it here in Toronto and had a really rockin' good time doing so. And it's really cool to be showing it in Toronto tomorrow.
Tell me more about the joy. What was the joy?
Well, a creative process, and particularly a group creative process, is always filled with joy, or at least should be. I hear horrible stories about, oh, gee, making that film or doing that play, that was such a pain in the ass and so difficult. And I think, why even do it? And I have a really good time making films, and I have collaborators who also have a really good time, and we have a good time together. And work hard, as you know, but made with a lot of joy.
But I can't help but think on the way out, the first person I ran into, I started speaking about climate change, and I started speaking about, have we gone too far as a society? Have we gone too far past the climate change world? I mean, that had to be in your mind when you were thinking about how people would see this film.
Say that again?
Well, when I came out of the film, I was speaking with people about climate change. I was speaking to people about whether we had gone past the point, whether we were too far.
In other words, it sparked some discussion.
Yeah, I mean, that had to be on your mind while you were making the film.
Well, look, I hope people take this idea and see it in the same way Jim and I have, which is as a prism through which to see a lot of things. we've been working on this script for a long time. We started in '06. And the thing that kept us going as writers and kept me going as director, and now even having to talk about it, is it's just a cool idea. And it sets off kind of a chain reaction. So you might, whether you like the film or not, afterwards, if, as you're suggesting in your case, it triggers thoughts about things and ways of seeing and thinking about the world we're living in right now, well, that's fine. One of the things we look to in cinema is to have cause for thought.
Has anything you've made in this film, you said the next film you want to make, you wanted to be very, very, very different. Has anything you made this film, you carry anything with it to this next film you'll be working on?
I have no idea what my next film is.
Really?
Yeah.
So when you came in, you said the next film, I figured you had something in the back of your mind.
No, I just know I want it to be different. But what it is, I do not know.
Well, you got some time.
I just finished this thing, man, about 12 days ago. Mm-hmm. So I'm still recovering from it.
And you got like how long of doing press and talking about this film now ahead of you?
I guess a little while. I'm about to have a kid in Greece, and I'll be living in Greece for the next 12 weeks.
Is this your first kid?
Yes.
And how are you feeling about it?
Elated and scared.
Scared.
Do you have kids?
No. Yeah. So I'm asking, that's a real question.
Yeah, elated and scared.
This
but
movie
it'll be fine. You know, all these other people do it. I mean, how hard can it be, right?
But I mean, this movie's in many ways about the future. You know, did the fact that you're having a child and the future belongs to them cross your mind when you're making this film, or at least talking about this film now?
No, now it is, now that you're talking about it, but I hadn't thought about it before.
Well, man, I mean, it makes you think about it.
Yeah, I know.
Do you think about the world that you're...
I think about a kid who's still going to be alive when the next century comes around, probably. Mm-hmm. And, yeah. Stuff's changing quickly, and the population's going to be, what, 9 billion or something by 2050? Already it's hard to find a parking space or get around. You know, drive around Toronto. It's a drag. Who are all these people?
Sure, but what I mean is that one of the most important parts of the film, for me at least, and this is just my interpretation of it, was the revelation that we are way too far gone. And that's not a revelation that only comes from your film. It comes
in other words,
from the news.
We're screwed.
We're screwed. I mean, that has to be on your mind as you're about to have a kid.
Yeah, it's too bad. Yep.
It's too bad.
Too damn bad. Didn't have to be this way.
So the hopefulness side of things. So what do we do?
You're asking me?
Yeah.
What the hell? I'm just a simple, humble filmmaker. What the hell do I know about what we're supposed to do?
I got a hunch it's something you thought about.
I do not know.
Do you think about it?
Do I think about it? What we're supposed to do?
What we could do, even on a small macro level, on a small micro level.
Well, look, we take our recycling. I don't know, man. We take our recycling out, and I think this is a tiny tiki umbrella against the avalanche.
Yeah, this is the feeling I got from the film.
And let me say this though: one scary thing is some friends think that, like kids in their 20s, for example, think we're so screwed. Who cares? And there's a sense of nihilism, of hopelessness, of fatalism. And that would be what? That would be something worth fighting.
I would say so. Apathy is always worth fighting. I think in your film, it seemed like this big global, we finally have the answer.
And we screw it up.
And not even so. If we think taking recycling out is going to help things, even shrinking down the population might not help.
Here's the deal, though, that is true, is people have to accept that it all can end. And only when we accept it can we arm ourselves with the tools to fight it. The fact that you have these idiots in Washington, D.C. right now saying, oh, it's a hoax and all this because they want to keep making money is a big problem because it keeps people from accepting it. If we can simply accept it.
We need to be scared.
Yes, right. But you know what, though? If you can accept it without fear and simply think, okay, now what do we do to get to work? And work from a calm place. That would be ideal.
Have you given any thought to...
There's a line in the story where the aforementioned Vietnamese dissident character speaks the line, when you know death comes soon, you look around things more closely. And I think that's true.
Have you given any thought that if the technology came, you'd choose to be big or small?
No.
Not even a bit?
We're already pretty small.
It wasn't that funny. When I was watching this film, there were moments where I looked around and I thought, I've never felt so small in my entire life.
Yeah, yeah. And the more we learn about astronomy, the more we see just how, a cliche to say, how teeny tiny we are.
How tiny we really are.
Yeah.
I can't begin to tell you how much I enjoyed talking to you about all this today.
Good. Sorry I don't have ready, thoughtful answers to all of your penetrating questions, but what the hell?
Well, I think that, but I think that David Lynch often talks about how explanation can be the death of art. Do you ever feel like that?
It's said that we look to art not for answers necessarily, but to articulate the questions well. Pablo Picasso said, "Good taste is one of the greatest enemies of creativity." And I had another one too, but I just forgot it.
What questions do you think you're asking in this film?
I don't want to say those. If I could just tell you that I wouldn't have to make a film.
Alexander Payne, thanks for coming in.
All right, man.
All right.
Thanks for
Take
having
care.
me.
No problem, man.